And you have poll numbers that show it seems to really have worked for him.
Yeah, we have some new polling out this morning from Political Morning Consult, where you see 62% of registered voters approve of President Biden right now. And, you know, he promised to have this kind of boring temperament and be focused on the issues. And so far, what people have seen from him and his team is, you know, like Jonathan was saying, focusing on COVID relief, talking about making sure they get more money to people, talking about making sure they get more shots in people's arms. And there was this flurry of activity in the first weeks that got rid of a lot of the most controversial pieces of executive actions that President Trump had put into place, right? And so it seems that Americans are looking at what's happening in the Biden White House after 4 years of the Trump administration, and they're saying, you know, that's something that we can get with, and where we're expecting more. And so whether or not that holds is going to depend on whether or not, you know, this COVID relief bill, how big it ends up being and how much money people end up getting in their pockets, I think.
Well, yeah, and Eugene, we were obviously earlier in the show, we were talking about our concerns about the size of the COVID relief bill. And yet you look at polling, 3 out of 4 Americans, they support the COVID relief bill as Joe Biden has already put out there. So chances are good. Even if he passes it as is, economic concerns aside, that'll be a big winner with the American people as well. Let's talk about Donald Trump. What does your polling show about his continued hold on the Republican Party? Is it just as strong, or does it seem to be slipping a bit?
Yeah, so there was a question in the poll, should Donald Trump still play a prominent role in the Republican Party? Overall, people say 25% of people say he should play a major role. But when you drill down and look into Republicans, 59% say major role and 18% say minor role, right? This is still the party of President Trump, former President Trump. And up until January 6th, we were kind of seeing that after January 6th, we were seeing Republicans start to maybe distance themselves from him a little bit, and that has changed. They still have yet to decide how to, you know, whether to continue to embrace President Trump as their leader or exercise kind of like the politics of contempt. And another thing that we saw is that who would you vote for in the GOP primary in 2024? 53% said Donald Trump, right? And so again, this is the party of Trump. And it makes it very hard for these other people, Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, Mitt Romney, Ted Cruz, Donald Trump Jr. possibly, because he's still dangling this possibility of being a contender. And that means everyone who wants to run has to continue to embrace him. They can't speak out against him because of how much of a hold he still has on the Republican Party. And they've spent 4 years saying anyone who doesn't have kind of this undying loyalty to former President Trump now is, you know, a traitor to the party. And so how can you run against someone like that? So until President Trump makes it clear whether or not he's running in 2024, they're kind of in a limbo there.
Yeah, so he's sitting at 53%, Jonathan Lemire. I have a feeling if the same question were asked of about Barack Obama by Democrats afterwards, the number would be in the 90s. I'm not so sure that only 1 out of 2 people saying he should play a major role or that they would vote for him in a primary is necessarily a positive thing for him. I want to get back to Joe Biden, what Eugene was talking about Joe Biden's approval rating, 62%. You followed the Trump White House day in and day out. That is a number he did not have on Election Day 2016. That's a number he didn't get close to having, didn't get within 12 points of having during his entire presidency, and obviously not a number he was close to in the 2020 election. This is actually what do you see accounting for a 62% approval rating, which is a number that a lot of us haven't seen in a very long time.
Yeah, Donald Trump never approached that number, Joe. Even at the high water marks, if you will, of his presidency, he really never came anywhere near even 50% most of the time. And certainly we saw him lose to Joe Biden, which feels like a lifetime ago, but just a few months ago. Talking to the Biden aides, they are heartened by this number, and they attribute it to a few things. First of all, just simply a change of pace, a change of tenor, a sense that Americans were simply tired of the chaos that surrounded Donald Trump day in, day out. And certainly the event of January 6th exacerbated that feeling. They feel like that certainly Biden aides point to the broad bipartisan support that his COVID relief bill has, that the Democrats and Republicans alike believe the government needs to do something. There's some question about how big the package should be, as discussed earlier in the hour, but the aides have taken to pointing to this polling to suggest this effort is bipartisan, even though that Republicans haven't yet gotten on board with the lawmakers gotten on board with the relief package yet, but Republican voters have, and that they feel like this is something that America recognizes. And also, as a final point, America tends to rally around its president in a time of crisis. That is what we have seen. Certainly George W. Bush after 9/11 is just the most recent example, most extreme example of that. And this is the nation right now is in a time of crisis, both health crisis because of the pandemic and economic crisis, the aftermath of last summer's racial reckoning on racial justice. It's a nation in a crisis, and it wants to rally around its president. And it points to how it didn't around Donald Trump and how Donald Trump, in many ways, blew that opportunity. The pandemic even presented itself as a moment where he could have tried to bring the nation together. He could have perhaps enjoyed widespread public support, and he, frankly, blew it. The day in, day out, his mistakes led Americans to back away from him, rather than rally towards him, which is their natural instinct.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.